Don't want to keep everyone tonight. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ian Watson, Senior Planner with Upland Planning and Design, and we're working with the town of Yarmouth on this planning review project. Just for everybody's awareness, we are recording the presentation tonight, the presentation portion of the night. And then when we get to the Q&A session, we'll stop the recording so we're not broadcasting your living rooms to the world. But we will take notes during that time and post them along with the meeting recording on the project website. So I might as well get right into it. There we go. As I mentioned, I'm Ian. I work for a company called Upland, and we work with municipalities around Atlantic Canada on planning projects, design projects, but my specialty is plan reviews such as this. And at some point in this project, you'll probably meet Ryan, our engagement manager, maybe Paul and Lydia, who's here with me tonight taking notes. And then back in the office, we have Rachel, our GIS mapping analyst. So tonight, I'm going to give a quick overview of what the planning review project is, a little bit of planning 101. What is planning? Why do we do it? Outline the project timeline and what you can expect for the next 2-ish years. And then talk about some of the engagement opportunities that much has happened and is ongoing, but then there will also be engagement opportunities throughout the various stages of the project. And then an opportunity at the end, as I mentioned, for questions and answers and I guess preliminary discussions on what matters to you in your community. So I guess if I had to sum this project up down to its basics, this project is a planning review, and the intent is to update the town's municipal planning strategy, land use bylaw, and subdivision bylaw. And these three documents are the primary documents that control how development happens in the town, where buildings are permitted, different types of uses, how the subdivision of land happens. And the current municipal plan and land use bylaw, they date from 2016. The subdivision bylaw dates from 2005. And like all good plans, business plans, personal life plans, whatever they are, municipal plans should be updated regularly. They get amended maybe every year for small things. And then every 5 to 10 years, you want to come back to them and take a more comprehensive look to check to see if your assumptions have changed, if conditions have changed, if technologies have changed. There's lots of things that didn't exist when the plan was written nearing 10 years now. Like, for example, electric vehicles were on the horizon, but they weren't a big part of our transportation mix yet. So there's new considerations as we go into this planning review. So to take a step back, you might be wondering, what is planning? So again, to boil it down, it's a collaborative process used to help citizens, business owners, and civic leaders envision a common future for their community. So fundamentally, this is providing a framework to guide how land is used, how and where growth and development happens, and how and where buildings are built. But that's the what, but why? Actually, as of 2018, all municipalities in Nova Scotia are required to have planning for all areas of their landmass. It was optional prior to that, and as the dates on those documents suggest, the town did have planning, but now it's actually required in Nova Scotia. So there must be a reason why. Why do we do it? The quote I like to use from a high level is, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. If we don't set out how we want our communities to grow, to evolve, to change, change is inevitable. And if we don't have a plan for it, it's going to happen anyways, and we won't have input and guidance on how that happens. But more specifically, a big one is we plan to support our community's character, culture, and identity. What are the places in our communities that are special to us? What is the style of development that supports our spiritual, emotional, aesthetic needs? What are the places that speak to us, and how can we protect them, support them, encourage more places like that. A big part of planning, and obviously a huge topic in Nova Scotia, Canada, and around the world right now, is housing. Planning has a huge effect on how and where and what types of housing you can build. So a big part of planning is thinking about that aspect of our communities. Another big part of planning is planning for change. That could be environmental change, where we have climate change and the effects of sea level rise are big on the mind, and that's going to affect our communities. There's always ongoing demographic change. For a long time in Nova Scotia, that was an aging and shrinking population, and how do we adapt our communities to that? And then, of course, in the past couple of years post-COVID, the discussion's been around a growing population and the needs of that, and making sure that our communities adapt to accommodate that. We plan to create vibrant streets and commercial areas. Something that's interesting in Yarmouth, for example, is that in the existing plan, there's a rule that professional services are only permitted in the downtown. And, that's causes challenges for some businesses, but it's also something that's ensured that businesses have stayed downtown when in a lot of communities they have left to outer areas, new malls, that kind of thing. So the way we design our planning documents actually has a big effect on commercial opportunities, vibrant streets, main streets, and all of those things. Kind of related to that is planning for economic development. A lot of the employers' economic development opportunities in our communities are highly tied to land and to resources and to water. And so the way we plan our communities really affects those opportunities. Obviously, it's not an issue in the town, but in a lot of Nova Scotia, agricultural lands, for example, making sure that they are protected from conflict with other uses or don't get plowed under for subdivisions has a huge effect on that aspect of our economy. Similarly, in the town of Yarmouth, the waterfront's a big topic. It's a working waterfront. There's the fishing fleet and related industries. And so planning to make sure that there's a place for those in the community is a big part of economic development. A huge part of planning, one I think about a lot, is infrastructure and using it efficiently. Our roads, our sewer, our water. We're really, really fortunate in Nova Scotia, North America, Yarmouth, to have these infrastructures that support our day-to-day lives. We often don't think about them until they don't work right, but they're there silently keeping us happy and healthy. But they're also really expensive. And so a good plan makes sure that we're being thoughtful about where new infrastructure happens, making sure that we use the infrastructure we do have to its fullest, and as necessary, making sure we have new infrastructure to accommodate growth and our vision for the future. And we plan also to separate incompatible land uses. So, there was a time when you had the factory town, the company town, and you might have had the factory and the worker housing right next to it. And it worked because your job was right there, and you walked home. But in this day and age, you still want to have the jobs in the factories and the industries and all those things, but people don't necessarily want to live right next to the smokestacks. So part of planning is thinking about everything in its place and making sure there's a place for everything, and maybe not necessarily mixed together. But kind of, the flip side of that is thinking about those uses that are compatible, that can be mixed together, and that help support a diverse and vibrant community. Back to that Main Streets piece, for example. So, is there opportunities to have residential units above ground floor commercial, for example, and making sure our plans support that, or having recreational opportunities near to schools or seniors facilities, or making sure there's grocery stores near where people live, or a place for grocery stores where people live. So more specifically, how does it work? That's the why, but how do we actually achieve all of those things? Um, we through that municipal plan, which is the kind of blueprint, the big picture policies and direction for our communities. We set our vision and where we want to go, and then we implement that through the land use bylaw, the zoning, as you may think of it. And through that land use bylaw, through those policies and regulations, there are a bunch of things that we can regulate. We don't have to, it's kind of um, specific to the community and specific to the needs of the community and the desires. But under the legislation, there are things we can regulate to achieve all those things that planning does. Things like lot standards, how big they have to be, and frontage and that kind of thing. Building placement on the lots, how far you are from your neighbors, building sizes, the location of services, parking, landscaping, development in sensitive areas or lack of development in sensitive areas. All things that we can regulate but don't have to, as the situation requires. Kind of the flip side of that, I like to bring this up because we hear this a lot as we do engagements, things that people want to regulate maybe through planning, but we can't. And this is obviously not an exclusive or an exhaustive list, but it's the ones that come up very frequently in our planning engagements. So a big one's resource activities. We don't regulate the act of farming or the act of harvesting trees or the act of fishing or mining. We can regulate the things related to them, like where it's appropriate to have a sawmill or a animal feed plant or a fish processing plant, but not the actual resource activities themselves. It's not municipal land use planning. We don't regulate most land below the ordinary high water mark. Then you're getting into provincial and then eventually federal jurisdiction. We don't regulate people. So we might say where buildings are appropriate, but not who lives in them or who owns them. That's not the realm of municipal planning. Similarly, we don't regulate land ownership. These plans don't talk about rental versus owners versus condominiums or anything like that. We don't regulate taxation, not through the plans. This comes up a lot. You're changing the zoning. How's that going to affect my taxes? Taxation in Nova Scotia is based on how the land is used. So if you have a commercial business, it's taxed commercially. If you have residential, it's taxed residentially. And that could be different from the zoning. And finally, we don't regulate provincially owned roads and highways. This isn't about speed limits or the maintenance of those roads, or even where new provincially owned roads and highways happen, for example. Most importantly, and the part that I really enjoy about all of this, is that planning is a collaboration. It's not just me sitting at a desk writing these plans out. It's with you, the community, with your council, businesses, town staff, which, by the way, you have a really great council and staff, really exciting ideas and a lot of passion for this topic. We're also your planning advisory committee, who's council members plus members of the community groups, and then as the kind of stakeholder, as the owner of the legislation, the province is also a stakeholder in this. So in terms of project timeline, we've been going, I guess, since late 2023, launching the project internally, meeting with the town, understanding the issues and laying out a more detailed work plan for the work to come. Since that time, we've been doing kind of background review, reviewing statistics and data and issues that are happening in the town, touring the town, taking photos, really getting to know inside and out what we're dealing with for the next 2.5 years in terms of issues and opportunities. And then now in the spring of 2024, we are in the initial engagement, the kind of visioning, high level, who are we as a community? What do we want to be? And what are the key issues that we need to tackle in achieving that vision? So at kind of the end of this, we'll have a big picture idea of where we want to go. And then we're going to hit a municipal election in the fall. So that kind of puts a little bit of gap in things. And then once that's over, we'll come back in winter 2025. So kind of late this year, early 2025 to do issues and options engagement. So, you're telling us the big picture now. How does that translate into actual key issues and policies? If we're talking about housing, what does that mean on the ground in terms of issues and options? If we're talking about transportation, what does that mean? So we're going to be having a series of workshops to go through different topics and get into a little more of the weeds on uh, how we want to see those issues tackled in this plan. We as a community, you and council and staff, and us who's tasked with the technical aspect of carrying that out. Then we'll go back, turn that into actual draft planning documents and bring them back to you in the second half of 2025 to review. Do these documents actually reflect your vision that you told us in this engagement, your ideas and options that you told us in the second phase of engagement? Did we turn these into actual useful policies and regulations? And there'll be a lot of refinement that comes out of that. We'll go back and do another draft and then come back late that year or early into 2026 to review the draft again with you to see how your feedback has changed it and updated it and affected the semi-final documents. And then finally, kind of spring 2026, we'll have a final draft, and we'll take that through a formal adoption process where it goes to council, and then there's a public hearing, then it gets adopted, hopefully, and then it goes off to the province for sign off, basically, against the legislation. So, in this initial phase of engagement, there's a lot of engagement happening. Again, asking that big question of who are you? Who are you as a community? What do you want to achieve in the future? And what are some of the key issues that we need to be thinking of as we go there? So this engagement has involved this online presentation and public meeting, as well as there was a public in-person one 2 weeks ago, I think. There is currently a public survey, an online public survey, and an online business survey that are available, and those are getting really great feedback. So if you haven't done that already, I encourage you to also take a look at those and fill them out if you can. We're doing stakeholder interviews with special, I don't want to call them special interest groups, special knowledge groups, I guess. For example, housing providers or people who work with the elderly or environmental groups, stakeholder or businesses, business organizations, basically groups that will have a knowledge and an interest in specific issues that we're going to be tackling through this process. And then kind of at the hub of all of this is the town has a Get Involved Yarmouth page. That's kind of the web page to post information about the project, host documents, host drafts as they come up. So as we go through this first round of engagement, we're collecting feedback. For example, tonight, yeah, Lydia's here taking notes. And then we will summarize all of this in a what we heard report that kind of goes into the high level of what were those key issues that people brought up? What is that vision that people have? And then we'll take that to council kind of for sign off to present to them and then get their thoughts and sign off before we move into the next phase of the project. Yeah, and so basically through the work of this project, we're starting big picture, high level, and we'll narrow down, and then by the spring of 2026, we'll be at that winnowed right down to final details. It's not changing pages here. Let's see. Oh, there. So that, in essence, is the high-level overview of what this project is, what you can expect over the next, I guess 2 years, and where we're going. There's a email address specifically for the project, planningreview@townofyarmouth.ca. So if you have feedback or questions through the process, you can always send them there. There's also that website, getinvolvedyarmouth.ca/planning review. And then if you're a kind of more analog person, certainly you can always drop into the town hall, ask for the planning team, or call up the town and ask for the planning team, and and they can certainly help you as well. So with that, take a second here to stop the recording.